Welcome, everybody, to this latest iteration of the Accountability Intentional Living podcast, looking at the accountability practice. I'm Marty Keller, and I'm joined, as always, by my colleague and mentor, John Donovan. Good afternoon, John.
Hi, Marty. How you doing?
I'm participating well in my life and enjoying it immensely. You?
I'm doing well.
Good,
I'm doing
good.
well.
We, the Intentional Living podcast, for those of you who might be here for the first time, is uh, it's a learning about focusing on breaking patterns of behavior that I find that I say I don't want, and yet they continue to manifest. Like, what does that mean? Well, for example, have you ever hurt someone that you loved and then later regretted it, and then shortly thereafter hurt them in the very same way?
Hmm.
Have you ever realized in the middle of an argument that you were on the wrong side of the argument, but you continued to argue that point anyway? Or have you ever known that you were about to do or say something that you would regret, maybe even had a little voice in your head tell you to stop it, and yet you found yourself unable or unwilling to stop?
Yep.
Well, those are the kinds of behaviors that we often find ourselves stuck in spite of our conscious mind's intentions. So, in this podcast and in the accountability practice in general, we examine and uncover subconscious obstacles. There's some obstacles that generate these behaviors to what we want, and we learn to befriend them instead of fighting them, to make them allies in manifesting the life that we want to live. And this work is done in a group setting. John and I both facilitate meetings to which anybody watching is invited. And we'll talk a little bit at the end of the podcast how you can join a meeting. They're all on Zoom. Um, but in this podcast, John and I share our experience, we share our insights, we share our frustrations. We do our best to explain the practice, but it's more of an experience than it is just something to contemplate from outside. So if you've ever found yourself in any of those situations where you were found yourself doing something that you didn't want to do, you consciously didn't want, and yet you felt you had no power over it, you we invite you to come to an intentional practice meeting and learn about specifically some opportunities that might be of value to you. Um, and before I introduce today's topic, John, any thoughts that you'd like to share about that?
I learned a new way to define a feeling or emotion, which is happy. I was listening to a comedian, and he said the definition of happy is being where you're at with no expectations. So I'm gonna steal it from him and use it. So
Yeah. When you shared that initially, it reminded me of a scene in the very first Harry Potter book, in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, where Harry encounters this mirror down in one of the lower floors of the Hogwarts, and it's called the Mirror of Erised, which is Erised is the word desire spelled backwards. And he discovers that the Mirror of Erised shows you, when you look in the mirror, what you see is what you feel you're missing in your life.
oh,
And uh, and Harry sees his dead parents, and he sees his family that he never knew because he was orphaned. Um, so he asks Dumbledore, the headmaster. He goes, "What do you see when you look in the mirror?" And he goes, "I see myself holding a pair of socks."
well, the thing you least expect.
Or it's like he
Yeah,
has everything he needs. He just doesn't have socks, enough socks.
yeah,
So that's like the definition of happy. It's like
yeah, yeah.
I have no expectations. I
No,
got what I want.
right here.
But imagine getting what you want in life. That's a struggle that many human beings, including myself, have undergone. And part of what the value of the intentional living practice has been for me, as we've discussed many times on this channel, is learning to discover that subconscious realm that part of our mind, which occupies maybe as much as 99% of the mind, is in that
Yep.
subconscious realm that's
Yep.
full of desires, full of needs, full of wants, full of fears, and I have no contact with it. And it just shows up as behaviors.
Yep.
And
It manifests. Yeah.
yeah, and so part of what this practice has taught me is how to appreciate, to see those hidden desires, bring them into the conscious mind, and then decide whether those are something I want to keep or there's something I want to transform. And then the practice, we learn here how to do the transformation work.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been since last September, we've been going through what we call the accountability practice principles. And this is just a series of statements of conjecture. They may be fact, they may not be, but they are principles that we
Yeah.
found of value to guide us through this process. For example, I'm always getting what I want is one of our
Yep.
principles, or it's never about the other person. Um, and so we have done a podcast on each one of these principles, and some of them were complicated enough or complex enough that we did a couple of podcasts.
Hmm.
And the last week we talked about a principle that says to tell the truth. Well, let get it on the screen so I speak it correctly.
Right.
And
And some of these are just like absolute statements. The issue is never the issue, which garners uh, um, interchange. Like, what do you mean that can't? That's an absolute. And then we get into dialogue, conversation, and expand our awareness and willingness to work together and stuff. So yeah.
well, on your board that you use in your meetings and your classes, you have the what you call the five constants of relationship.
Yeah.
And we might, in light of what you just said, we might consider these principles are all about relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have value to me only insofar that I have a relationship with myself and with other people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're the sound a tree makes in the forest when no one's around. Um,
Right.
it
Yeah.
might be true, and but does it have any value?
Correct.
So last week we talked about truth with compassion is honesty. Truth without compassion is cruelty. And that podcast on that will be posted shortly. In fact, if you're watching this one, that one should already be on this channel, on our YouTube channel. Today, we want to talk about the next one. Feedback without permission is violence. Feedback without permission is violence. When you hear that, John, what occurs to you? What does that mean to you?
Um, we're gonna talk about that feedback. It's like somebody giving advice without being the advice being solicited. When I saw those three, the two after that are in the same area. And when I first became a counselor, I I had gone to school and studied Carl Rogers and all these guys that I knew how to help these people, remain sober. So I would offer them my opinion or feedback, and I wouldn't ask them for it. I just assumed they came to see me because I knew something they didn't, that they were looking for what I knew. So I would just authentically tell them instead of asking them. Number one, my assumption is if you're a if you're a drug addict, you're looking here to be sober. Well, that's maybe not why they're there. Not all drug addicts want to be sober. They may come there to get somebody off their back. They may come there to figure out a good way to use instead of the way they've been used.
Yeah, how to use without
And
guilt.
that's right. Or how to use and not have to give it up entirely, abstinence, but do it in a controlled fashion.
Right.
Um, so me not knowing that was their motive, I would act as if I knew what they wanted, and give them feedback about abstinence, and I could feel them leaning back or moving away from me, or creating a argument, or tit for tat kind of thing, or things that I thought were not useful in the recovery space or the meeting, and it used to baffle me. And then I understood. Well, I'm assuming I know what they want, and I actually owned that in my process of being a counselor. I would find that they would be adversarial, or they would continue to use. I worked in a 2-year residential mentally ill, chemically addicted facility. So I would do groups 2 or 3 a week. And I would see that there's no real, it wasn't effective the way I thought it could be or should be effective. So I asked myself, instead of blaming them, or they don't care, or they're not really interested, or they're just pulling a scam, or they're getting free room and board because they were homeless and they got to, sure, I'll come there, but they don't do any work. So instead of blaming them for it, I thought, okay, if I'm participating in it, and this is part of this accountability process, if I'm engaged with them and there's no or a lack of results, positive results on their side, what is my part in this agreement?
Result.
Thank you, in the results. So instead of blaming them, put all the blame onto them, I asked myself, how am I contributing to this dismal, that's the word I was looking for, dismal result? And then I thought, oh, if I see my value as a counselor on how well they do, that's codependency. That's me. My value is in their behavior, not in who I am. So my thinking was, I'm there to help them, and that actually put me in a place of condescending attitude, which they felt. And then when I was like, oh, I'm all excited about helping you, they would back away or run away, and I was left baffled. So I go, okay, codependency is helping somebody, which enables their addiction and or behavior or pattern. So I decided to quit, and I changed. I'm here to help you I have information. It's empowering information. If you want the information, please ask me. I went from helping to empowering them to take on their own power, instead of me being the good guy or the bright guy or the savior guy. And everything shifted. It's like, oh my God. They started what I call leaning forward, or engaging in questions and sometimes conflict, or their own opinion. And I would be able to keep the dialogue on point, because instead of assuming what they wanted, I asked them. So if their goal is to manage their addiction, I would say, okay, you can manage your addiction. The results you get from this management are yours. And I would suggest to you to consider something else, or go ahead and do it, manage it consciously, and see what happens. It's none of my business what you do unless you ask me. So the recovery process, with me facilitating that way, became effective. There was an efficiency that happened, to where the people in my groups would start, I don't say thinking for their own. It's not so much thinking for them, but become proactive be their own advocate, instead of me being their advocate. And which I still advocate for them, and teach them or show them or exemplify self-advocacy. And it changed the way. And was the precursor to all this body of work I'm finding that I put together, intentional living, where uh, me as a peer facilitator asked you, what are you looking for? And then maintain the dialogue around what you're interested in, not what I think you should be. So,
The thank you for that. What I like about this statement, it's one of those this sort of absolute in your face kinds of assertions. It says, um, let's get the language correct here. It says feedback without permission is violence.
yes,
The violence is not a it's not an ambiguous word. It's a
not a
pretty
soft word. No,
it's a
it's not a.
stark word. Um, can you say a little bit more about why that's violent? Giving giving you
Um,
feedback without asking you ahead of time. Are we talking about
because
all
I'm
context,
trying.
or are we talking about the context of a meeting? Is this generally true?
Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, so let's take apart the word violent. When I say violent, I'm talking about any coercive or manipulative and or controlling motivation for the feedback. So if I'm like even unconscious or subconscious manipulation or coercion, when I talked about I'm here to help you, I was in a subconscious state of better than listen to me and you'll be better. That's dismissive of their own power. That's actually redefining what they know their truth or their experience. So I was, instead of listening to them, I feel this, I'm doing this, and listening, I was not hearing that and redefining a reality or dismissing them. Um, and that was what I couch in the form of emotional violence. Verbal violence is diminishing and using words that are diminishing, or I want to say cajoling. Let me say this in a nice way so you hear it, which is diminishing their value. So any violence for me includes any coercion or manipulation, and I'm talking about me on my part, that's violating their value as human beings. That's what I mean. Feedback without permission is violent.
It's
Does that?
interesting when you were describing that. What jumped in my mind was that's the way our parents treated us.
Yep, exactly.
And so here we are again. This is the challenge of addiction is that we are recapitulating the family of origin experience and body chemistry and imposing it on other people unconsciously.
Yep.
And so so that's what I heard is that before you had this discovery or this awareness, you were basically treating the guys in the class the way your parents treated you.
Exactly.
And so I want to reiterate this, particularly for the newcomer. The violence
Yeah.
is from the perspective of a little kid. The violence is in being told that my experience, which I'm having, is not authentic.
Correct.
When I'm told that the experience that I'm having, I'm scared, I'm angry, I've got adrenaline beating through my body, and someone goes, I'll give you something to cry about, or you're not really feeling that,
Right.
or go to your room and
Right.
think it through, or any of those kinds of use the word dismissive, those kinds of dismissive, excuse me, statements that as a
Mm-hmm.
little boy, what I'm hearing is I'm wrong.
Right.
Not only am I wrong, but I'm about to be crushed in some kind of way. Uh, I'm about to be my very experience is about to be stopped
Correct.
and I'm
Annihilated.
annihilated. Thank you. I'm terrified, and now I
Yeah.
can't say that.
Yep.
And as we've
Yep.
discussed many times before, the actual emotional experience of suppressing that feeling creates some kind of body reaction. And over
Yes.
time, that stress that we put on our bodies gets absorbed into our nervous system and becomes the basis of addiction. It becomes the basis of codependence and all the things that we work on here.
So it also is logged in our memory,
Right.
and it's logged there in the frequency of how that happened, the feeling tone of that happened. So when we get into our adult lives and we sense what we call a trigger, like you triggered me, that trigger, whatever is happening, like me coming in the classroom telling them, "Oh, guess what? You guys are real lucky I'm here because I'm going to help you." They feel that same frequency of what happened to them as a child, and their reaction is either to shut down or comply. It's like I got a lot of, "Oh, John, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much because you told me this." And it's like, and nothing was translated or embodied on their part. It was deflected. So yeah, it's
Just like we learned to
and
do
this
as
is
little kids.
yeah, to stuff the experience, which what's happening physically is holding on to a frequency. Now, the body's designed for that purpose. We can hold on that frequency, and we can also hold on to it even if we heal that or are nurtured through that. But holding on to that is to keep us safe in the future. So if something similar happens, we know that we're alerted to danger so that we can better take care of ourselves. That works well in somebody who is self-actualized, don't take anything personal, knows who they are, and knows that other people don't define them. They can act proactively in that. Somebody that doesn't have those qualities, like myself before my recovery, was reactive in that, and that's a fight, flight, freeze, please, reaction response. So
Before we run out of time here, I want to flip the script. Um,
okay.
so feedback without permission is violence. I'd like to point out that the implication here is that relationships that are based on informed consent, voluntary association are the more powerful ways of being with each other.
Yes.
So if I become habituated in my relationship with you or my partner or my friends, my family, if I become habituated to ask permission when I have something that could be perceived as advice, feedback, or whatever, and could therefore be heard by somebody else in a way I have no control over. I don't have any control over how anybody listening to me talking hears it.
Correct.
I do have the power to ask for feedback,
Mm-hmm.
but it just occurs to me that one of the macro um, intentions of this work for me is to learn how to love freely and to watch my own coercion, my own neediness, my
Oh.
own habits of manipulating other people to get what I want from them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is just a form of that. So the flip side of it is um, feedback with permission is an act of love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And refraining from offering feedback when it's clearly not in the room to be asked for is also an act of love.
Yeah. Yes. In the Saturday morning group, I have in the opening statements, um, if you want to offer information about what you heard the other person say, please ask them first. Are you willing to hear what I heard, or my interpretation of what you said, or how I felt about what you said, or what they gave me, and then wait for them to answer. Because in my experience as a child, I'd say, "Here, would you like me to help you with that?" And then I boom bust in with the help, and I didn't wait for it. They may have said no, and it's like, and then I say no. It does not need an explanation. No means no, and then we move on. And it's in the group, even though I don't pointed it out as such. And they do get in the habit. I say, "Oh, I got to comment on what so and so said. Is it okay with you?" And then they wait. But they actually wait for them either to come back on the screen or shake your hand or say yes. And that's a practice of what we're talking about.
Right, right. And I notice since I've been doing this work, I notice it a lot when people offer me advice or feedback that I didn't ask for. And I find myself physically bristling
Yeah,
and sort of like sitting up and then I watch. So there's a part of me that wants to say, I didn't ask you for that. And it's like, okay, where's that coming from? So this principle can really teach us a lot about ourselves
yeah,
and about how we learn to be in a voluntary, loving, unconditional relationship with one another. First, starting with that little kid, that scared little kid in each of us, the primary one, the primary
mm-hmm.
place to do this work is with him or her.
Mm-hmm.
But then to extend that to other people. And
Yeah,
it's amazing. I know that you have this experience in working with people in this intentional living process, is how often we get reports that say someone's partner has changed after the individual starts doing this work. And it's not because the other person has changed, it's because the participant has changed. And
correct,
the way he or she is behaving toward the partner is now creating something new for that partner that may not have been there before.
correct. Yeah, yeah, very good.
And so there is a flip side to this principle. Feedback without permission is violence. And that's actually what I'm going for here is to learn to scrutinize my motivations and my words to take out as much coercion as I humanly can do
Correct.
in just conversing with someone else. And I'm not perfect at it. There are some
Mhm.
times when people piss me off, and I'll say something like, oh, bullshit.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and I intend to be in unconditional, loving relationship with myself and others.
yeah. I have learned to couch all my questions or requests in the form of asking, would you be willing to hear a question I have? Would you be
Right,
willing to hear some feedback I have? And then I wait for them to answer. And sometimes it's like they don't know that they have that part. That's their part. Yes, no, or maybe. They just sit there looking at me. And I said, I'm going to wait for your permission first to acknowledge that you're willing to hear this. So, yeah.
and I got to say, as someone who's been facilitating meetings for a while, I love it when someone says no.
Yeah, yeah, that's power. They're advocating, and it's not right or wrong, good or bad. They just get to hear themselves. No,
Well, and the group gets to
I
hear
get
it
to.
too.
For me, that would be revisiting my 3-year-old, where I go, no, I don't want to do that, and not being dismissed or oh, you got to leave the meeting now. You said no. It's like no, they can say no. That's really cool. I
Yeah,
like it.
exactly. Because no means no, like you said a minute ago.
No means no.
Or as
Yeah,
we say,
I'm real careful how when my grandson was at that age, I was real careful how I couched the questions.
right,
I asked him one time, you gonna help me clean up all these toys? He goes, no. And I just took a deep breath. And I go, okay. And I started picking up the toys. It's like I asked him a question. No means no. And then,
right.
he as soon as I started doing it, he started doing it too. But
Yeah,
he got
of
to say
course.
no and hear
And
himself. That was
and
cool.
his no got accepted,
Yes,
which then gives him the information that you're okay just the way you are.
you're okay just the way you are. You don't have to
And
comply or
right,
do the right answer.
right. And
Yeah,
so now that I've said no and you've let me say no, I'll help you pick up the toys
there you go. Yeah.
because I'm not
Exactly.
coerced.
I'm not coerced.
Yeah,
And part of love and unity is working together and being part of the
yeah.
community.
There's great
Okay.
joy in that.
Yep.
Well, any other final thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
Well, actually, I'm looking forward to the next two because they kind of wrap all three of those wrap into each other. So
Well, quit teasing the audience, John. Everybody will not
I
have to
know.
wait a week to get the
Okay.
next
All
one,
right. Really. Okay.
but it's okay.
Who shot Jr.
Well, my friends, if you want to learn more about this process for yourself, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, we do this work in a group, and there are 4 intentional living groups that meet every week. They're all on Zoom, and they're different days of the week, different times of the day, and the information on the specifics will be available at the end of the podcast, along with the Zoom addresses for each of the meetings. And we invite you to come and kick the tires of the work. If you've heard something here that you have more questions on, or you'd like to disagree with, or whatever, you can leave a comment and we'll respond in the comments, or you can come to a meeting and give voice to that as well. We'd love to get whatever feedback you find useful. So with that, John, we're going to wrap it up now, and we will see you next week.
You got it.
All right. Take care. Thank you.